بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Respected listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yesterday we completed Surah Al-Ra'd. Today we move on to Surah Ibrahim. Surah Ibrahim is a Meccan surah, about 52 verses. Allah begins the surah, Alif Lam Ra Kitabun Anzalnahu Ilayka Latukhrijan Nas Min Adh-Dhulumati Ila An-Nur. Alif Lam Ra, this book we have sent down to you so that you may take the people out of darkness towards the light. In the surah, at the beginning of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by speaking about the mission of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam with that of Tawheed and the proofs of Tawheed. And Allah begins by speaking about the revelation of the Quran. And through this Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that through this Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is to bring out the people and take them out of darkness towards light. Now, the mission of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to convey the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in doing so, warn the people of the evils of shirk and so on, and through this take them out of the darknesses that they are already in and bring them towards Deen. The role and responsibility of the Prophet ﷺ was to give da'wah and was to invite the people. However, guidance itself is something that is only possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah says, بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِمْ, that through the permission and instruction of their Lord. So Allah is the one who guides, and we learn from another verse of the Quran, Allah says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That you cannot guide who you want, rather Allah guides who He wants. So Allah's responsibility, and Allah is the one who guides people. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, their role was to convey the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From this verse we learn that the only way mankind can gain salvation and guidance is by adhering to the Quran, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Further in this verse, Allah speaks about the punishment of those who disbelieved. And then Allah continues to speak about them by saying, الَّذِينَ يَسْتَحِبُّونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا عَلَى الْآخِرَةِ وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَيَبْغُونَهَا عِوَجًا. Those who prefer the worldly life to the hereafter, and they prevent others from the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they seek crookedness in this book. Now, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to speak about some of the qualities and traits of those disbelievers. And He mentions one of the things is that they prefer the worldly life to the hereafter. And again, for us, this is a big lesson that how we give preference to the dunya, and we will compromise often our deen for the dunya. However, it should be the other way around, because those who compromise their deen for the dunya will fall under this verse. And Allah continues by saying that not only are these disbelievers content with their own waywardness, but they seek to prevent others as well. And not only that, they search for errors and issues and problems and mistakes within this book and the teachings of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then Allah speaks about how He sent messengers to their people so that they may explain to them. And the word he uses here is that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا بِرَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. And we have not sent any messenger except with the language, with the tongue of his people, so that he may explain to them. And the previous Anbiya alayhim salatu wasalam, they were sent their messages with which they conveyed to their people in their native languages. But the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in other places as well that it has been revealed in Arabic. And we learn that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for many reasons actually, the Quran has been revealed in Arabic. And even in another verse of the Quran, Allah says, بَلْ هُوَ قُرْآنٌ مَجِيدٌ فِي لَوْحٍ مَحْفُوظٍ, that this is the glorious Quran in the preserved tablet. From other ahadith, we learn that in Jannah, the language of the people of Jannah will be Arabic. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, أحب العرب, that love the Arabs, لثلاث, for three things, لأني عربي, because I am an Arab, والقرآن عربي, and the Quran is in Arabic, وكلام أهل الجنة عربي, and the language of the people of Jannah is Arabic. In fact, we learn from some narrations that even the previous books, they were originally in Arabic, but then Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, he relayed it to the relevant prophets, and by translating it to them or he told them, instructed them to translate it to their native languages when preaching their books to their people. Then Allah mentions about how He sent Musa alayhi salatu wasalam with his signs, and again with a similar message, that an akhrij qawmaka min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur, that take out your people from darknesses to light, وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ, and remind them of the days of Allah. Now if we look at the first verses of Surah Ibrahim, Allah's addressing the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and He says, كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكَ لِتُخْرِجَ النَّاسَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, that this is a book which we have revealed unto you so that you may take out the people from darknesses to light. And then when He addresses Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, the wording is slightly different. أَنْ أَخْرِجْ قَوْمَكَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, that take out your people. The meaning here and the difference here is that Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was sent to his qawm, to Bani Israeel, and his task was to preach to them and take them out of darkness towards deen. However, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was sent for the whole of mankind, and this is the reference here. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ, and remind them about the days of Allah. The ulama of tafsir and hadith have differed in what the meaning of this is. It's possible that this could relate to those days that hold importance, for example, the battles of Badr, Uhud, Ahzab, and so on. And it could mean days of reward or days of punishment. But anyway, Allah instructs the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, well, He had instructed Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to remind his people about these different types of days. Again, as before, we learn about how the people would object to their prophets and say that you are just people like us. And we learnt before of how the people of Makkah would say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that how come you have come with this? How come an angel didn't come? And Allah mentions some of the threats the people made against the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah speaks about the creation of the skies and the earth. And He mentions about some scenes of the Day of Judgment and how many of these disbelievers, and they refused to believe and they rebelled against the Prophet ﷺ, and in previous ummats they rebelled against their anbiya, all because of the deception of shaitan, who coerced them or who whispered to them, and they fell into his trap. But then Allah says on the Day of Judgment, what will happen? وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ وَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ. That shaitan will say when the matter shall be decreed, that Allah made you a true promise, and I also made you a promise, but I betrayed you. وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. But on that day, what will he do? He will then seek bara'ah and say that I have nothing to do with you. Why? وَمَا كَانَ لِي, I had no hold over you. All I did was call you, and you accepted. So then he will say as well, فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. So don't blame me, blame yourselves. So this is mentioned here. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives some examples of the Muslim and the disbeliever. And he gives the example of a tree. He mentions that tree whose roots are well grounded. So he likens the Muslim to a tree with strong trunks. Roots are well grounded and its branches are high up. And what Allah wants to say here, or what Allah is saying here, is that just like the way deep-set roots give strength and stability to this tree so that a strong wind could not uproot the tree, then in the same way this Muslim, his iman, it holds him strong, firm and grounded. And just like this tree, its branches are elevated skywards. Then in the same way, the deeds and the actions of a Muslim, again, they reach the heavens. And then he gives an example of the disbelievers in the opposite way. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he speaks about the creation of the skies and the earth and how he has made different parts of his creation subservient to others. And he speaks about this nizam and tartib that he has, where the sun, the moon, and all the different creations of Allah are set in their places, and one doesn't come before the other, and everything goes according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah then speaks about Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. He says, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ جَعَلْ هَذَا الْبَلَدَ آمِنًا وَاجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. And here he speaks about the prayer of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And he says, and when Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam said that, "O my Lord, make this city." Now what happened was Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he had left Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam and Hajar radiyallahu anha in the deserts of Mecca. And he had prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah make this city peaceful and keep me and my children away from worshipping idols. This is what's mentioned here. Now, we've done previously that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ اجْعَلْ هَذَا بَلَدًا آمِنًا. In Arabic, when the letters alif lam come onto a noun, they specify it. And when the alif lam isn't there, these are four common nouns, the word is then general. So in the first instance, what had happened was Mecca hadn't become a city. So that's why he had prayed to Allah that, Allah, make this a peaceful city. And then he had made other prayers. Then when he had come back a few years later, people had already flocked to Mecca and the place had become established. So that's when he made this second prayer. And subhanAllah, the prayer of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was amazing. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he was given the title Khalilullah, and we've spoken about some of his sacrifices, but his sacrifice and his obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was amazing. The first time when he left Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam and his mother in the deserts of Mecca, according to narrations, we learn that when they had reached Mecca and where the Kaaba was to be built, he left them there, and it was there that he received the command that he should leave them. Now, according to narrations, we learn that where he received the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he stopped, he turned around and started walking off. He didn't even stop to say goodbye or to explain to Hajar radiyallahu anha what he was doing. And she kept calling after him and he wouldn't respond. And then she said that, has Allah instructed you to do this? And then he turned around and said, yes. And then she said, well, if Allah has instructed you, then he won't let us go to waste. Then he travelled further, so he still didn't stop. He still carried on walking. And then when he had moved away from there, then he turned around and he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he prayed that, oh Allah, make this هذا بلدا آمنا, and make this a peaceful city, a secure, peaceful city. وَرَزُقْ أَهْلَهُ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ مَنْ آمَنَ مِنْهُمْ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. That give its people sustenance and make a group of people's hearts inclined towards it. Now again, the genius of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, even then, his prayer for his family was to give them security. And we know that even now, without security, well, that is one of the most important things for a country or for a people, security. In fact, one cannot even worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala peacefully if they don't have peace and security. And then he spoke about prosperity, about sustenance. So, and even here, when he made that dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knew that I have just completed and obeyed a divine command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, he had the confidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would accept his prayer. So, and Allah did. And how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept his prayer? Makkah, look at Makkah today. What was once a barren desert, yet now they have everything there. And millions visit Makkah every year. And his dua continued. And I've mentioned this before as well, that his final dua as part of that was رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. O Allah, send amongst them a Rasul, a messenger, who will recite unto them your verses and will teach them the book and wisdom and will purify them. And Allah answered that prayer, and the answer of that prayer was none other than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned some scenes of the Day of Judgment in some graphical detail. And Allah says that don't think that those who are neglectful, that Allah is who are transgressors, that Allah is unaware of them. Allah gives them respite. And then he speaks about how on the Day of Judgment, how they will be punished. I mentioned some of those scenes from the Day of Judgment. Now with that we finished Surah Ibrahim. We then recited Surah Al-Hijr. Surah Al-Hijr is also a Meccan surah, 99 verses. Allah begins the surah, Alif Lam Ra Tilka Ayatul Kitab wa Qur'anun Mubin. These are the verses of the book, the Qur'an, which is clear. And at the beginning of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that there are many of the disbelievers who would wish sometimes that they were Muslims. But Allah says, let them eat and enjoy this world. And then Allah gives some examples of people of the past and how some of the things that they would say against the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, they would call their prophets insane. And in other verses we learn that they would call them madmen, so on, magicians, sorcerers. Here also some of the things, again, some of the claims that they would make, or some of the demands that they would make. Why is it that an angel didn't come down with the book? Then Allah mentions about the Qur'an itself, and He says, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." That we have sent down the dhikr, meaning the Qur'an, and we are there to protect it. SubhanAllah, there's Imam Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentions an event, a story from the court of the Abbas Khalifa Ma'mun. And he says that often in his court they would have debates on intellectual issues, and the ulama would be present there. It once happened that there was a Jewish man that was there at one of the debates, and from his looks, his dress, his manners, his appearance, it seemed that he was an elegant person. And again, he spoke very eloquently, he seemed intellectual. And when this meeting and this debate was over, Ma'mun called for him and said that, are you from Bani Israeel? He said, yes. So then Ma'mun said to him, why don't you become Muslim? So he said, no, I'm not willing to leave the religion of my forefathers. And so the matter ended there, the man went away. After a year, the same man returned, but he returned as a Muslim. And again he spoke in the court of Ma'mun. Now when this session was over, Ma'mun called him and asked him that, aren't you the same person who came last year? He said, yes. So he said, at that time you refused to accept Islam. So tell me, what made you accept Islam now? So he said, when I went back from here last year, I decided to do some research on religions. And he says, I'm a writer. So I often write books and sell them. So this time I wanted to do a little test. So I wrote 3 manuscripts of the Torah. And then I made some additions and deletions of my own. I took them to a synagogue, and the people there, they found the manuscripts interesting and they bought them. He says, then I did the same with the Injil. I put together 3 manuscripts. I put my own additions and deletions and took them to the church. And again, they were received well and they bought them from me. Then I did the same thing with the Quran. 3 good-looking manuscripts of the Quran, and again I put my own additions and deletions. Now when I went to sell them, it was a problem. Every person I went to sell it to, they would look into it, and then when they would see these differences, they would return it back to me. And he said, from this I understood that this book, this Quran, is protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And this is the meaning of Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. That Allah himself has taken responsibility to protect the Quran. The Injil and the Torah, the responsibility for looking after them and protecting them was left to their people, and they distorted and altered them. However, the Quran was the promise of Allah was that He would protect it Himself. Then Allah speaks about again some of the nidam of the earth and how He has placed different things in different ways. He mentions about the stars, and Allah says, وَلَقَدْ جَعَلْنَا فِي السَّمَاءِ بُرُوجًا وَزَيَّنَّاهَا لِلنَّاظِرِينَ. And we have created stellar formations in the sky and have beautified them for those who look. وَحَفِظْنَاهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ رَجِيمٍ. And have protected them from every accursed shaitan. إِلَّا مَنِ اسْتَرَقَ السَّمْعَ فَأَتْبَعَهُ شِهَابٌ مُبِينٌ. Except for the one who tries to eavesdrop, and he is chased away by a clearly visible flame. Now, the shayateen, they don't have access to the heavens. Now, Shaitan Iblis himself, he was cursed in the heavens at the time of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, and he deceived Sayyidina Adam and Hawa alayhi salam. But that was before they appeared on the dunya. Until then, the entry of the jinns and the shayateen in the heavens was not prohibited. But however, after Sayyidina Adam ﷺ came down to the earth and shaitan was expelled, then their entry was banned. But what they would often do was try to steal or try to catch snippets of the conversations of the heavens. And we learn from different hadith how they would attempt to do this. They would climb on each other and so on. And we'll learn a bit more about this when we read Surah Al-Jinn. But what had happened was they were able to take snippets. But then before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, just before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were prevented from doing this as well. So, and that's why we learn also in Surah Al-Jinn of how the lead jinn, he sent out groups to find out that what has happened in this world, that now we are prevented from listening in to snippets of conversations that are taking place in the heavens. And then we learn about how the jinn came and they heard the Prophet ﷺ reciting the Quran, and they returned back and they informed their leader, who said that this is what has come between us and the heavens. Allah then speaks about the creation of the earth and so on. Allah speaks about the creation of man and his origin. He speaks about the creation of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, and when Allah instructed Shaitan, well, He instructed the angels to prostrate before Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, except Iblis, who didn't. And how Iblis responded, subhanAllah, when he responded to say that he won't prostrate before Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, he actually says, Rabbi bima aghwaytani. He blamed Allah for leading him astray, which is why he acted in this way. Allah then speaks about the story of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, and we mentioned this, I think it was just yesterday or the day before, about the guests of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam who came to give him glad tidings about Ishaq, and who was sent to punish the people of Lut alayhi salatu wasalam. Lut alayhi salatu wasalam was the nephew of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah mentions people of Aika and also the people of Ashab. The surah has been named Surah Al-Hijr, and Allah mentions وَلَقَدْ كَذَّبَ أَصْحَابُ الْحِجْرِ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And indeed the people of Hijr, which was the rock, they rejected the messengers. The people of Hijr were actually the people of Sayyidina Salih alayhi salatu wasalam. So the people of Thamud and Hijr are the same group of people. With this we completed the tilawah of Surah Al-Hijr. We then move on to Surah Al-Nahl. Surah Al-Nahl meaning the honeybee. It's a Meccan surah, 128 verses. And the reason it's been named Al-Nahl is because the honeybee is mentioned in it, and it's mentioned as a unique marvel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, one of the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the operations and the way the honeybee works is itself a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, one of the reasons for the first few verses, Allah says, أَتَى أَمْرُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَسْتَعْجِلُوهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى عَمَّا يُشْرِكُونَ. The command of Allah is bound to come, so do not ask for it to come sooner. Pure is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and much higher than what they ascribe to Him as partners. The mushrikeen of Makkah, the Prophet ﷺ would always warn them about the Day of Judgment and the punishment of Allah, and that Allah had promised victory for the Prophet ﷺ and punishment for his enemies and opponents. So they would challenge, and they said, look, we don't see anything coming, meaning the punishment. So in reply to this, it was said, أَتَى أَمْرُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَسْتَعْجِلُوهُ. The command of Allah is bound to come, so do not ask for it sooner. So that's why the beginning verses are there. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the creation of the skies and the earth. He speaks about the creation of man. Allah speaks about the plots of some of those from before and how they were punished. But not only will they have received the punishment in this dunya, but also on the Day of Judgment, Allah will humiliate them. Allah says, ثُمَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يُخْزِيهِمْ وَيَقُولُ أَيْنَ شُرَكَائِيَ الَّذِينَ كُنْتُمْ تُشَاقُونَ فِيهِمْ. That where are those that you would ascribe partners with? Where are they now? And then in opposition, in contrast, Allah speaks about the people who adopted taqwa and what their rewards will be on the Day of Judgment. Allah speaks about His sending of messengers to all nations, and He speaks about how all of His creation is subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He speaks about some of the customs of the Arabs. Allah says, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى, that one of them would be given glad tidings of a daughter. And this was known about the Arabs, that they would look down upon somebody in whose house a girl is born. And so Allah, and they were known to bury their daughters alive. So Allah mentions this here. And not only would they see this as something bad, but even they would say things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He has daughters and the angels are His daughters. Allah mentions some of this here. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the honeybee. He says, وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ أَنِ اتَّخِذِي مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا وَمِنَ الشَّجَرِ وَمِمَّا يَعْرِشُونَ. And your Lord revealed to the honeybee that make homes in the mountains, in the trees and in the structures they raise, of which they raise. Then eat from all the fruits and go along the pathways of your Lord, made easy for you. From their stomachs comes out a drink of various colours, in which فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ, there is cure for people. Surely in that there is a sign for those people who ponder. And subhanAllah, the intelligence of the honeybees, it's a marvelous, it's almost a miracle in itself, their system of governance and how they operate. All the management, it rests with one bee, the queen bee, ruling head of all the bees, and it is her skills and efficient distribution of roles, which helps run the whole system. It lays thousands of eggs itself within a short period of time, and then it divides responsibilities amongst the bees, and they all have little jobs that they all do. Each has its own job, and then Allah says, فَاسْلُكِي سُبُلَ رَبِّكِ ذُلَّ, that go along the pathways of your Lord, meaning when they fly, there's so many of them together, yet they don't bump into one another. They all have their own pathways, and then they go to distant places, dropping things, picking up things. All of this, they do this. It's a marvel from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the honey that they produce, Allah mentions in it is cure for mankind. Once a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said that his brother was unwell. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised him to give his brother honey to drink. So according to some hadith, the next day he came back and said he was still unwell. And according to others, we learn that he became even more unwell. So the second day, the Prophet ﷺ said, give him honey. The third day he came and he said, he's still not well, give him honey. So then the Prophet ﷺ said to him, صَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَكَذَّبَ بَطْنُ أَخِيكَ, that the word of Allah is true and the stomach of your brother is a lie. I mean, the problem is with him. But then what happened is, after he gave him honey again, then he became better. And what it was is that the honey hadn't actually had enough time to work on him. But then when he gave him the final time, it did its job, and then he was cured. Allah speaks about the Day of Judgment, and when witnesses will be brought forth on the Day of Judgment. And then some scenes of the Day of Judgment are mentioned as well. Allah mentions some laws related to haram and halal. And then at the end of Surah Al-Nahl, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And in brief, in these verses, Allah speaks about how the disbelievers will be punished for their ungratefulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who had blessed them, but they, despite enjoying the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they still didn't obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah instructs the believers to refrain from ungratefulness and to refrain from haram and to eat and consume that which is halal. In the last few verses of Surah Al-Nahl, Allah says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasanati wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." That invite people to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good counsel, and debate with them in the best of manners. Surely your Lord knows best the one who strays from his way, and Allah knows best the ones who are on the right path. And then Allah continues, if you were to harm them in retaliation, harm them to the measure you were harmed. And if you opt for patience, then it is much better for those who are patient. And Allah instructs the Prophet ﷺ, be patient, and your patience is bestowed by none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And do not grieve over them, and do not be in distress over their plots. Indeed, Allah is with those who fear Him and those who do good. According to most commentators, these verses are Madani, and they were revealed in relation to the martyrdom of 70 of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. And Sayyidina Hamza radiyallahu anhu was also killed. Now, this is during the Battle of Uhud. Now, during the Battle of Uhud, when the Mushrikeen, when they left the battlefield, the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, well, there were 70 of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum who were found martyred. And included therein was Hamza radiyallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's uncle. Now the Mushrikeen in Makkah, they were particularly angry with him. And to take their anger out on him, after they had killed him, they had actually mutilated his body. And his nose, ears, and all his different parts of his body were cut up. Now the very sight of it shocked Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said that he was going to take revenge for Hamza radiyallahu anhu, and he said that he'll have 70 men from the Mushrikeen in Makkah also mutilated, similar to what they'd done to Hamza radiyallahu anhu. So because of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed these verses, that yes, O Prophet of Allah, you are grieved. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but then even in your grief, this isn't how you should respond. And yes, you have a right to respond in a similar manner to what they had done. But then for one, Hamza radiyallahu anhu, who was mutilated, you cannot exact the same punishment on 70 of them and mutilate them. And even though you have this right, even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to remain patient. So when the Prophet ﷺ received the verses, he said that yes, we shall remain patient and we shall not take any revenge from anyone. And he himself, he paid a kafara for his oath. And in fact, on the conquest of Makkah, during the conquest of Makkah, the Prophet ﷺ could have taken revenge, but he didn't, as we learnt yesterday. And in fact, Wahshi radiyallahu anhu, he also accepted Islam at the conquest of Makkah. And the Prophet ﷺ remembers him for this because he was responsible for this. But then the Prophet ﷺ forgave him, and Islam was wiped his slate clean anyway. We then recited Surah Bani Israeel, also known as Surah Al-Isra. Allah begins the surah by saying, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwa as-sami'u al-basir. Glorified is he who took his servant by night from al-masjid al-haram to al-masjid al-aqsa, whose surroundings we had blessed, so that we may show him of our signs. Indeed, he is all-hearing, all-seeing. In the beginning of this surah, Allah speaks about the events of Mi'raj, the ascent to the heavens, or the Isra, the journey of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam travelled from al-Masjid al-Haram to al-Masjid al-Aqsa. This was a journey which the Prophet ﷺ took part in, and it happened during a portion of one night whilst the Prophet ﷺ was still in Mecca. He travelled from Al-Masjid al-Haram to Al-Masjid al-Aqsa on a miraculous horse provided to him, and then from Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, when he entered Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, he prayed Salah, the Tahiyyat al-Masjid, and then he went up to the heavens. A staircase was bought for him. What that staircase was like, Allah knows best. And then he travelled to the heavens. Now, this was an actual journey that he took place, and it wasn't a dream. Some have claimed that it's a dream. It wasn't a dream. It was an actual journey. And we understand this for many reasons. Mainly because, when he had returned from this journey and he told Muhani radiallahu anha, she said, don't tell the people or else they'll reject you even more. Now, had it been a dream, why would they reject him? Everybody sees dreams, so there'd be no reason to reject him. But why? Because it was an actual journey that he took part in. And the Quran, the Hadith, and the Ijma' prove that the Mi'raj was a physical journey, not just a dream. And even though the word ru'ya, which means dream, has been mentioned as part of this, but this isn't that ru'ya. It's given in ways to give an example that this was almost like how a dream manifests. But in reality, it was a journey in which the Prophet ﷺ underwent. I remember my beloved teacher, he once related, and he's, mashallah, he's been to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and not only has he been there, but he's led salah there. He's even taught there as well, on the request of the ulama there. And he says that I'd done so much research, I'd even spoken in length about Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. But then he says, one day I was listening to a speech, and he said, I just realized that there is no end to learning. Because he says, I was listening to the Shaykh, and he was saying that here there's a note to understand, a nukta here. Where Allah says, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa. Allah took his servant by night from al-masjid al-haram to al-masjid al-aqsa. But at that time, al-masjid al-haram wasn't a masjid, because the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca then. So this was a house full of idols. It wasn't a masjid then. So why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call it al-masjid al-haram? This is to give the Prophet ﷺ glad tidings and to inform him that this house of Allah will one day become a masjid. In any case, the Prophet ﷺ, he travelled from Al-Masjid Al-Haram to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa on a buraq, which is a special heavenly horse. When he reached Bayt al-Maqdis, he tied the buraq close to the gate, entered the masjid, offered 2 rakat tahiyyat al-masjid, and then a staircase was bought for him. Using this staircase, he went to the first heavens, and then we learned that he went to the rest of the heavens. How the staircase was, the nature of it, Allah knows best. The resident angels on each station and each heaven greeted him. He met the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam on different heavens, such as Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam on the 6th, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam on the 7th, and so on. And then he went beyond and reached a plane where he could hear the sound of the pen writing the destinies. He saw Sidratul Muntaha, the far tree in Jannah, on which moths in gold and different colours were falling from above, and which was surrounded by the angels. He also saw Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam in his real form. He saw Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, the well-attended house believed to be located in Jannah, directly above the house of Allah in Mecca. Sitting by that was the founder of the Kaaba, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, with his back reclining against the wall. It said that 70,000 angels enter this Bayt al-Ma'mur every day, and they will be waiting for their turn to re-enter right until the Day of Judgment. Prophet ﷺ saw Jannah and Jahannam with his own eyes. And in this journey he was also given the prayers initially starting with 50 and then reducing it to 5. We learned that when he returned, he was given 50 salawat, and when he on his way back, Sayyidina Musa ﷺ asked him that, "Oh Muhammad, what has your Lord given you?" So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Allah has given me 50 salawat as a gift." Sayyidina Musa ﷺ said, "No, go back. Your people will not be able to pray 50. Go back." According to different narrations, we learn that Allah reduced 5 and sent the Prophet ﷺ down, or according to some of the narrations, Allah reduced it to half. So in any case, he kept going back until Musa kept saying, "No, go back, that's too much." And then the Prophet ﷺ came down with 5. So then Musa ﷺ said, "No, go back. Look, I've learned my lesson with Bani Israeel. Your people won't pray." So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Look, now I'm ashamed to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." So then Allah revealed that yes, these are 5 salawat, but the reward of 50 will remain. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasallam, they followed him down, and then when he got to Masjid al-Aqsa again, he led the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasallam in prayer. According to some narrations, we learned that it was Fajr prayer, and then he returned to Mecca, and then that's where the journey ended. When he informed the Meccans about this, some of those who had recently accepted and weren't clear, they actually turned away from Islam. And again, this is another proof that it was a physical journey. Had it been a dream, why would they have apostated? But there's also the testimony of a non-Muslim about this Mi'raj. Hafiz Abu Na'im al-Isfahani, he mentions in his book Dalail al-Nubuwah that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent Dihya ibn Khalifa radiyallahu anhu with a letter to the Roman emperor. So Herakl, when he read the letter, his Roman emperor, when he read the letter, he wanted to learn more about this man who claims to be a prophet. So he had an order, he instructed that if anybody was to come to find anybody where we can verify or we can learn a bit more about this man who claims to be a prophet, then the arrangement should be made. Abu Sufyan was passing by at the time, and he was presented before Herakl, and Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi and Imam Muslim rahmatullahi, they narrate this story in some detail. But as part of it, basically Herakl would ask a question and then Abu Sufyan would answer. Now Abu Sufyan wasn't a Muslim at the time, and every question he was asked, he says, I couldn't add in anything myself to discredit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was nothing actually. So, and he says, I couldn't lie because, if I'd lie, then, my people would say when we returned to Mecca that Abu Sufyan lied. So then, he says, I thought to myself, I'll tell him about Mi'raj. So he says, I said to him that, let me tell you that something that he claims to have happened to him. And then you will understand also that he was a liar. So Herakl asked him, what is this? So he said that this man who claims to be a prophet says that on one night he left Makkah al-Mukarramah and reached this Bayt al-Maqdis of yours, and then within that night, he returned back to us in Mecca. Now, at that time, the leading scholar of Bayt al-Maqdis was standing close by. So he said that, I know which night this is. So Herakl turned to him and says, how do you know? So he said, well, as a matter of habit, every night I wouldn't go to sleep until I had closed all the gates of the masjid, of Bayt al-Maqdis. And one particular night, I closed all the gates, but then there was one that wouldn't close. So he says, me and my staff, we all together tried, but we couldn't. And then we, got carpenters involved, and none of us could close it. And the carpenter said that, look, it's possible that the weight of the building has come to rest on the panels of the gate. So there's nothing we can do now. We'll come back in the morning and see if we can fix it. So they left. And then in the morning, when he came back, he says that I noticed that somebody had made a hole in the rock close to the masjid, which gave the impression that an animal had been tied there. So it was then I said to my colleagues that perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had caused this gate not to close last night because he wanted one of his prophets to come here. Now, after speaking about or indicating or mentioning the story of Israel, Allah then reminds Bani Israeel about their past, and he speaks about Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and in general he speaks about Bani Israeel and some of their transgressions and how they were punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says, وَقَضَيْنَا إِلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فِي الْكِتَابِ لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ وَلَتَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًّا كَبِيرًا. And in the book, we declared to Bani Israel that you will surely spread disorder on the earth twice, and you will show arrogance. So when the time came, when the first of these two came, we sent upon you servants of ours who were strong and powerful, and they entered into your houses. And this was a promise to be fulfilled. Then we gave you your turn to overpower them, and we blessed you with, or increased your strength with wealth and children, and made you great in number. Meaning, if you do good, you will do it for yourselves, and if you do evil, it will for you too. Later, when the second time came, we sent others, so that they may spoil your faces, and so that they may enter into the masjid as the ones before had done, and destroy what they overpowered totally. Your Lord will show mercy upon you. It is close that your Lord will show mercy upon you. But if you return, meaning to this transgression, we shall return. These few verses, they speak about some of the transgressions of Bani Israel, and how when they transgressed and they went against the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they were punished. Now, the ulama have, throughout time, they have searched and found that there were a number of incidents that these two instances that are mentioned here could refer to. One is after the time of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, the ruler of Bayt al-Maqdis became corrupt. So the ruler of Egypt attacked him and took away the gold and silver of Bayt al-Maqdis, but he didn't demolish the city or the masjid. And then another event is related where approximately 400 years after that, Banu Israel settled in Bayt al-Maqdis, some of them began worshipping idols, and the others began disputing amongst themselves. So another ruler from Egypt attacked them, and he affected the city, destroyed parts of it and part of the masjid as well. And then another event is mentioned when Nebuchadnezzar or Bukhtanasar, the king of Babylon, he ransacked Bayt al-Maqdis. He conquered the city, looted the city, took many of them as prisoners, and then he left a family member of the former king in charge. But then this man, who also used to worship idols, he rebelled against Bukhtanasar or Nebuchadnezzar. So then Bukhtanasar, he returned and he razed the city to rubble. After that, Bani Israeel, they went out as exiles to Babylon, where they lived in disgrace for 70 years. Then the king of Iran attacked and conquered Babylon, and then he returned Bani Israel to Bayt al-Maqdis, and they repented and they restored the original structure of al-Masjid al-Aqsa with the support of the king of Iran. Then another incident is mentioned when Bani Israel again forgot about their past and they returned to evil. So then, this is before the time of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, the king of Antioch, he attacked and he killed many of them and took many of them as prisoners and desecrated the masjid and its structure. Well, the structure actually he didn't, but he desecrated the city. But then some of his people came afterwards and they also destroyed the city and the masjid. Then Bayt al-Maqdis came under the rule of Roman kings, but they put the masjid back into shape. Then Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was born. After Isa alayhi salatu wasalam's ascension to the heavens, Bani Israel again, this time they rebelled against their Roman rulers. So the Romans, they destroyed the city and the masjid, and it lay like this until the time of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu. Now, it's possible that it could be any one of these, well, any two of these. But in a hadith, Sayyidina Hudayfa radiyallahu anhu says that he asked Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam about Bayt al-Maqdis and if it was a great masjid in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that it was one of the greatest houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Allah made for Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. And the way Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam had built it, he had the jinn subservient to him. They collected gold, silver and precious stones and used them in the making of the masjid. So Sayyidina Hudayfa radiyallahu anhu asked that, so where is all that gold and silver? So then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that when Banu Israel disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and even killed their Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah sent Bukhtanasar or Nebuchadnezzar on them, who was a fire worshipper, and he ruled Bayt al-Maqdis for 700 years. And the Prophet ﷺ said that this is what Allah means by when he says فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ أُولَاهُمَا, mean the first time. And he mentioned about how he entered the masjid, killed many people and took many as prisoners. Then Allah made a king from Persia stand up against him, and he freed Banu Israel from Nebuchadnezzar, and he had everything brought back to Bayt al-Maqdis. But then he also told them that they shouldn't return to their disobedience. But then when they returned to Bayt al-Maqdis, they went back to their evil deeds. So then Allah sent a Roman emperor unto them. And then this is what Allah means by the second time. And he attacked them, killed many of them, took them as prisoners. And then he took all the wealth of Bayt al-Maqdis with him, and he deposited it in his own temple. And the Prophet ﷺ says that it still remains there, and when Imam Mahdi will come, he will bring them back. So after mentioning these, then Allah says, وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا, that whenever you have turned on Allah and gone back to your evil way, whenever you've gone into your evil ways, then Allah brought punishment. But know that whenever you return to your evil, then Allah will always. So Allah left a general rule that وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا, that whenever you return to your disbelief and your rebellion against Allah, then Allah will return with this punishment. And some of the ulama have written that this is what happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when they rejected the Prophet ﷺ and rebelled against him. Some of them were exiled, some of them were killed as a result of their breaking their treaties and so on. But the rule remained till the end of time. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about how He has taken the responsibility to look after Al-Masjid al-Haram, the house of Allah. But Al-Masjid al-Aqsa is left to the Ummah. And as long as we are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the masjid will remain in our hands. But then once we start to go against the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we may also face the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this surah, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the rights of parents, the rights of family members. He speaks about the Day of Judgment. Some of Bani Israeel asked Prophet ﷺ about the Ruh, about the Spirit, and that's mentioned here. And at the end of the surah, Allah mentions about the signs that were given to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And with that we finished Surah Bani Israeel. Tomorrow we will go through Surah Al-Kahf. May Allah give us all the ability to understand. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.